I know it's the whiteout game, but do not sleep on Washington. This team is going to give Penn State a battle.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host of the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. This is my preview and prediction episode. I think Washington makes this a close one. I'll give you my final score prediction. If you have one, let me know your thoughts about this game down in the comments section. It is the whiteout, and I think that's what's going to help Penn State get this game into the win column, especially responding to Ohio State's loss. I'm going to go Penn State 24, Washington 17. I think Washington covers that spread, and the total goes under. I'm going to break this game down, just share some general thoughts, and then go through the game plan, key matchups, and some injuries of note in this game. Just it overall here, I worry about Penn State in this game, and why I think Washington makes this a little bit closer than anticipated. This is the classic hangover game for Penn State. I think it is close. I would not be surprised if Washington has this game tied going into the fourth quarter at, say, 17-17 based on my final score prediction. But Penn State will be down after this Ohio State loss. It doesn't end their season like years past, but that was an emotional game, and Penn State came up short. So now they have to be able to respond against a team that's they're not closer to Purdue. They are not a bad team. I know the record says 5-4, but not enough people are giving Washington enough credit here, and I will explain why throughout this episode. But most importantly, Washington's going to have momentum. They just beat USC. That's an emotional victory, and that's something that's starting to get Jed Fish's program in the right direction here, and there's a lot of talent on this team. I think Penn State's facing Washington at the wrong time. Frankly, I think it would be more beneficial for Penn State if they had, and that's the schedule, it is what it is, but I'm making a point that Washington gets stronger by each individual week. They get better as a team week in and week out. So Penn State's preference, just in general, probably they want to face Washington in the first half of the season, not the second half of the season here. I think Washington is just they're stronger. They've always been talented, but they have to figure it out. So I would like to think that this time is different because Penn State has that classic hangover game after an emotional defeat to particularly Ohio State. Think back to 2017, 2018. History says otherwise, but because of that history, hopefully James Franklin and this team can learn from that. But Penn State does traditionally drop this kind of game after Ohio State burst their bubble originally, and then it's Michigan State twice that puts the dagger into the season. Or if you look at 2021 after the loss to Iowa, it was that Illinois 9 overtime game. But that's why this whiteout game is so important. You're not going on the road. This game, you're not allowed to simmer with this game. The whiteout couldn't be more convenient for Penn State, if you will. I think, is it the most ideal matchup? Maybe not at the end of the day because of TV contracts and Ohio State and everything else. We all know what Penn State's preference was, but I think the whiteout actually helps in this situation because of that result against the Buckeyes, and Penn State's goals are all still attainable. The playoff, maybe. I won't go as far to say, hey, Big Ten championship berth, it's realistic. You only have one conference loss. If you hypothetically finish 11-1, who knows what happens, and you only have one loss in Big Ten play. So the conference championship is still possible, just not as likely. So my point is that Ohio State used to crush Penn State's dreams of that 4-team playoff, but now because of the 12-team, all the goals for Penn State are still attainable. But it was different in the past. Penn State needed that Ohio State win, and this time they technically don't. I do think it takes them at least one half to get settled in. Again, they're college players. They're student athletes. It's a little bit different in the NFL because it is your career. but these are still, maturity. You get maturity, you gain some maturity as you get older year by year. And I still think that's going to linger. That Ohio State game is going to linger from Penn State into the first half. They will need to get settled in, but that's why the whiteout game is so important. Washington will throw punches. This is a physical team, and this is a team that has momentum. And Penn State has been hurt by slow starts this season. So if they don't figure it out this game, don't be surprised. Even though I've been more confident that they will get better with slow starts down the stretch, I don't think this is the game to do it. Purdue, Minnesota, Maryland, that's where I think they'll be able to right that ship. For Washington, though, Washington matches up pretty well against Penn State. Washington's secondary, one of the best in the Big Ten. I'd even go a step further, one of the best in the country. Illinois gave Penn State a game until the fourth quarter. I see this matchup being very similar here. Also, Washington is well coached. This staff, Jed Fish, Steve Belichick, yes, that's Steve Belichick, the son of Bill Belichick, and then Brennan Carroll as their offensive coordinator. The Huskies have a lot of NFL coaching experience on this staff. So they are going to be well disciplined. They are going to be bought into the system, even though the season, if they had any playoff aspirations, those are completely over. But this team seems bought in because that was an emotional victory against USC the week before. Washington is full of talent. That was never the issue with this team. Oh, they can't do it. They're not that good. No, it was a matter of figuring out how to play cohesively as a team. Chemistry. This was a makeshift team. You lost the head coach. You lost the quarterback. This was the national championship runner-up from a season ago, and 13 starters are missing from that team. Washington was always going to be a second half of the season type of team, and this is where we are now. Penn State, second half of the season. This is not the ideal time to play Washington. It's the schedule. I'm just pointing it out. Washington is peaking. They are getting stronger and stronger. If I am Penn State, I would have rather have faced Washington earlier in the season, but that's the way it is. But I still think Penn State wins 24-17. Let me know your final score predictions down in the comments section. On the other side of this break, we will talk about keys to victory, matchups that are going to be crucial in this game and will have the biggest impact one way or another for a Penn State victory, which I think will happen, or a potential Washington upset. We'll talk about that on the other side of this break. And today's episode is brought to you by Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to the doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside of your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra, Cialis, and the generics for up to 95% cheaper. No insurance is needed, and it's all at one low price. It'll cover everything from treatments to ongoing care. And with hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That is HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plans. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet just $5 and you will get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, even view live play-by-play, and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. It's that convenient. It's that simple. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. And if you look over at FanDuel.com, the lines are up for Penn State versus Washington. Penn State is a 13.5-point favorite, minus 550 on the money line. If you're betting Washington, plus 400 on the money line. The total is set at 45.5. If you like those lines, you can visit FanDuel.com. And remember, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Keys to victory for Penn State offensively. You got a rebound in this game. You only scored 13 points overall as a team, but 7 of those came defensively. So remember, Andy Kotelnicki's offense had put up 6 points and got turned away inside of the 5-yard line, not just the red zone, inside of the 5-yard line twice. You need a bounce back game. Washington's defense is one of the better teams in the country. So offensively, you got to reestablish the run. This is a get back game for Penn State's offense. If you reestablish the run, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen were non-existent. Ohio State's defense did not respect the ground game. The wide receivers were pretty locked up, and that's why that matchup is crucial. The DBs for Washington against Penn State's wide receivers, if you can get the ground game going, that kind of takes some pressure off of the wide receivers and Washington's defensive line. So they have a great secondary, but the defensive line is not good. This is another situation where Penn State's offensive line should have the overall advantage just because the defensive line for Washington is not going to be as talented. Wide receivers need to get open. That's going to help the ground game as well. It's complementary. One helps out the other. So if Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen can get some of those explosive running plays, then you have to commit more resources to help out a lackluster defensive line for Washington. Then that opens up the passing game for the wide receivers. It can also do the same. Look, the wide receivers have been heavily criticized, and I think it's kind of been forgotten that this was still one of the weaker links on this, if not the weakest link on this Penn State football team, depending on who you ask. Offensive line, wide receivers, linebackers to an extent. Those are kind of the 3 position groups that just don't carry as much weight on this Penn State football team. But the wide receivers were certainly exposed against Ohio State. If they can get open in one-on-one matchups, which is going to be difficult to do, that will help the run game. Time of possession is important in this game because Washington's offense can run the ball effectively. And this is a game where we might see a little bit of a weather impact. We'll talk about that in segment 3 a little more. But time of possession is, of course, crucial. Penn State controlling the pace of the game, not giving Washington an opportunity to build a lead, especially if there's inclement weather, then that plays into your favor, of course. So Washington's secondary, being one of the best in the country, being one of the best in the Big Ten, you gotta do something to get them to kind of offset that. So ground game or the wide receivers being able to get open without an Andy Kotelnicki scheme. It's Andy Kotelnicki's scheme, if you will, scheming them open. Do your job. Do your job. Give your defense as much of a break as possible. That goes into time of possession as well. And Drew Aller needs to find a way to get into rhythm sooner rather than later. So I talked about how I think Penn State's going to have another slow start. I think it's going to be tied potentially going into the fourth quarter. Like I would not be surprised if it's 14-7 at halftime maybe, or a 14-10, or even a 17-10. Penn State's defense might pitch a second half shutout. But I do see Washington leading at the end of the first half unless you can get Aller into rhythm so that you're not playing catch up against a quality Washington defense. Defensively, they're going to bail out the offense in this game, which is why it is a little bit of a lower scoring game here. But there's 2 things here that Penn State really needs to key in on. Washington, and then we'll look at this overall. You got to get as much pressure on Will Rogers without blitzing. So Washington's offensive line is not good. They replaced 4 out of the 5 starters, and it's just been a struggle. It's why Will Rogers and the offense have not been better. Now they still have the ground game to rely on. But if you can get home with Abdul Carter or whoever's playing defensive end, if it is Denai Dennis Sutton or Amin Vanover or Smith Vilbert, I feel like Zane Durant and Abdul Carter could have an incredible day, and those 4 alone, and Devon J. Thomas, so that front 4 should be able to have an advantageous matchup against Washington's offensive line. And then that allows you to devote more resources to stopping 2 key players, Jonah Coleman and Denzel Boston. If you take away those 2 players for Washington, they really don't have a lot of other answers. However, I will talk about what Washington is going to do to counteract that, because they do have one other player that Penn State might need to key in on if you focus on Coleman and Boston. Overall, don't let the Ohio State game linger. Easier said than done, but you have to live up to the 1-0 mentality. This is the break in the season. This is the turning point, because 2017 and 2018 shouldn't have happened, and they did. You lost to Ohio State and then followed it up with a loss to Michigan State. This is this exact same turning point for a James Franklin team. Avoid it. Easier said than done. And Washington can play from behind. So it's not as simple as like it was with Wisconsin. Build a lead and you should be able to win. Build a double-digit lead, and you should be able to win. If you can shorten the game, that will help you. But Washington can't play behind because of the weapons they have in the receiving game, and Will Rogers is one of the more cerebral quarterbacks in all of the Big Ten, and I'd say the country, with how well-traveled he is, and he has played under Mike Leach's system. May Mike Leach rest in peace when he was down at Mississippi State. For Washington's keys to victories, and we'll talk about some of those players to watch specifically, start fast, try to build that sizable lead, and have a balanced attack. You want Penn State to basically be playing from behind in this case, but have a balanced attack. Keep Penn State guessing defensively. You have a Jonah Coleman. You have the assets to do it. You can go to, again, Denzel Boston leads the Big Ten in touchdown receptions, and then you can rely on the ground game to keep the ball away if you're able to maintain that lead later in the game. So Jonah Coleman on the ground. Kaleki Latu is that tight end that I'm looking at as, okay, this might be a mismatch. Tony Rojas has not been as good as we expected him to be. He is not developing correctly. This is a baptism by fire almost to an extent, because he looked really good right out of the gate, but as his responsibilities increased, as opposing offenses started to game plan and scheme for him, he really hasn't lived up to the expectations to this point. He could be covering him. Do you have to take Jalen Reed out of his assignment to cover a Latu? And that's a mismatch with how big Latu is as a tight end. And then there's Denzel Boston. I mean, that's Will Rogers' go-to. If you give him enough time in the pocket or let him roll out, he's probably more often than not going to find Denzel Boston. Do not allow Penn State to sell out for one thing defensively. That's why I say have a balanced attack. If they're going to sell out for Jonah Coleman, boom, you use the play action. You hit Latu, you hit Boston, and then you just kind of keep them guessing. You keep them on their toes. There's really not one game plan. And Tom Allen's going to need to have a diverse game plan for Washington. And then the key matchups. These will have the biggest impact on the game, like these one way or another. If one side wins in this matchup, then that's going to favor the team. Penn State's defensive ends against Washington's offensive tackles. Carter and what we hope is a healthier Denai Dennis Sutton, but even, again, Amin Vanover, Smith Vilbert, they could disrupt this game alone. That is the biggest key matchup on my list here. If Washington's tackles do a really good job of containing them, that's going to play into the favor. This one will have the biggest impact on the game. And then the tight end, Latu, against Tony Rojas or Kobe King, Jalen Reed. It's probably going to be Tony Rojas at first. I hope he can handle that assignment. I wonder if Penn State does turn to Jalen Reed or maybe even a Zach Wheatley. It's going to rotate back and forth between the linebackers and the safety. That's going to be an interesting matchup there. Denzel Boston versus A.J. Harris. Okay, so I'm talking about Denzel Boston a lot. A.J. Harris is going to have one of his biggest assignments all season. Granted, he had one the week before against Ohio State, but now this one has a severe impact because Washington, the second and third options, there's a gap between them. Whereas Ohio State, okay, it's Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, right? They can all explode at any given moment. It's really Denzel Boston in this Washington offense. A.J. Harris is going to have his work cut out for him. And not to state the obvious again, but Penn State's wide receivers versus Washington's DBs. Who's going to step up? Somebody, anybody. A Julian Fleming. And Amari Evans. Amari Evans has been so quiet since that Kent State game. Liam Clifford since the UCLA game. If somebody can just can punch above their weight class in this game, that is going to benefit Penn State a lot. And just overall, the coaching matchup again. Andy Kotelnicki versus Steve Belichick. Another chess match of football savants. Belichick because of the family bloodline. Andy Kotelnicki as an up-and-coming future college football head coach. If you are a true college football purist, you're going to love the chess match between Kotelnicki and Belichick. Then, now, to wrap it all up, we'll talk about some game info that you need to know, time, weather, key injuries, and just game plans, the blueprint for both teams. Penn State versus Washington. That continues after another word from our sponsors. And today's episode is also brought to you by ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle those rough mornings after drinking. Now, here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into this toxic byproduct in the gut. It is this byproduct, not dehydration that is to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme that breaks down the byproduct. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Here's how to use it, a step-by-step guide. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol first. For the best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more, and you will get 15% off your first order when you use code LockedOnCollege at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head over to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege, then use promo code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. And let's hear from another one of our sponsors on today's show, and that is Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier than before. Game Time Picks, it will filter out all of the fluff to show you only incredible deals on incredible seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. And you can access Game Time through the Game Time app or at gametime.co. And I have Penn State versus Washington, the whiteout game, pulled up on my screen here and have those Game Time picks, those best deals available to me. There's a super deal right now, lower sideline, section EG, row 21, all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, $213 per ticket. If you're looking at getting the lowest price available for tickets, the cheapest tickets, all in pricing, section SHU, row 79, $148 a piece. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LockedOnCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and use promo code LockedOnCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll pick back up with Penn State's offensive game plan versus Washington's defense, and then we'll go to the opposite side of it. Penn State's offense, I'm expecting a lot of run plays here. If what I'm seeing for initial weather reports, still a few days out, but if what I'm seeing for initial weather reports are true, you're going to want to run the ball. And again, this is a get-back game for the ground game. Singleton and Allen have been pretty quiet as of late, and I know Singleton hasn't been 100%, but Andy Kotelnicki, he is predisposed. He is a running coordinator. He is going to run the ball first before he's going to pass, and the matchup plays into that. I expect a lot of run plays, 40, maybe even 50, who knows, 12, 13 personnel, so a lot of Khalil Dinkins, maybe even some more of Luke Reynolds to go along with Tyler Warren. How about 6 offensive linemen? Now that's pending if Anthony Donko is healthy, but you also have JB Nelson, right? The depth is there for the offensive line. I've been extremely critical of them, and I will continue to be, because they had one of their worst performances against Ohio State when it came to run blocking. Maybe try 6 offensive linemen when you have that advantage over Washington's defensive line and front 7. Tight ends beat defensive backs in run blocking, so do offensive linemen, right? Vanga Ioane in motion to take out the edge defender or a cornerback. When you have 6 offensive linemen, that might help the run game a little bit. So you have the players to do it. And this game is not won on the shoulders of Drew Aller. This is a game where you can win ugly. Wins are wins. That's all that matters. Not moral victories. Oh, did Drew Aller get to 250 or 300 passing yards in this game? No, you win with what helps you in this matchup. And it's going to be a physical game regardless. Singleton and Allen desperately need a bounce-back game. One of them, if not both of them. And I'm expecting to see more Bo Pribula in this one as well. I don't know where he's been hiding. He had a great game against Wisconsin. I know that he was needed. But hindsight's 2020. I really thought we should have seen him more in against the Ohio State game. You might need him here against Washington to help with that overall ground game. Penn State's defense versus Washington's offense. So Washington's Denzel Boston. The wide receivers are good. Overall, they're good, but it's really Denzel Boston. Maybe still run some more zone. Penn State's been running some man, cover 3 hybrid. Now, we did see some new defensive looks against Ohio State, which played into the pick 6. But I would not be surprised if you try to use some more of that zone against Washington, because I don't think you need to do any fancy blitzes. I think Abdul Carter and those first 4 defensive linemen, Abdul Carter, Zane Durant, Devon J. Thomas, hopefully deny Dennis Sutton, but I feel like Amin Vanover and Smith Vilbert can have a good game on the opposite end of the line of scrimmage there. Penn State's offense just has to be prepared. Jonah Coleman is a bruising running back, and that's why it's so key to run the football on Penn State's side of things, because eventually I'm not trying to allude that, oh, you'll build, but people are going to get sore throughout the game, right? That will feel like a long game if Washington's able to sustain those drives, especially with somebody like Coleman who's able to lay the boom. But Washington likes to run the football. They set up the pass. I would not be surprised if both teams run the ball 40 plus times on each side. Look for the tight end lot two to be a matchup nightmare, especially if Penn State, I don't think they're going to help out. I think they're going to leave A.J. Harris and Denzel Boston on an island. Tom Allen's going to do that. So where do you have Zion Tracy or Cam Miller or anybody else? Maybe the smart thing to do here is to double lot two if Tony Rojas isn't able to do it himself. Bracket him, bring another safety down, or maybe the slot cornerback in coverage to double. He's really the only guy that I look at this as a matchup nightmare if you are not careful. So Penn State needs to sell out for the run first. You don't need to blitz, but if the first four are not getting home, that is concerning. That is concerning if Abdul Carter does not have 2, maybe even 3 sacks, or somebody on the defensive line. Zane, any of them. I feel like Devon J. Thomas, Zane Durant, guys in rotation, Alonzo Ford, Keziah Izzard, all those guys could have monster impacts in this game. Get to Will Rogers with 4 rushers, and then everything kind of takes care of itself. If you can do that, you will be fine defensively if you're Penn State. But sell out for the run first. The same game plan applies the way it did for Illinois, but Washington can have more of a balanced attack. As far as game info, for anybody that does not know, this is an 8 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff exclusively on Peacock. So don't be mistaken that, this is on NBC and Peacock. No, this is streaming exclusively on Peacock. You or a friend need a Peacock subscription. However, I don't know that this makes up for it. I think it's kind of a salt in the wound type of thing with it being streamed on Peacock. The whiteout game for Penn State, this is an annual tradition, right? It does have this IMAX feature. I'll be in the press box, so I'm not going to get to experience it myself, but they're doing a movie theater-like presentation with it, which I think is very unique, and that's kind of the ploy. They're using the whiteout game as a ploy to increase Peacock subscriptions. The audacity of NBC to do that. This is, of course, obviously at Beaver Stadium. As I mentioned, it is the whiteout game. 13.5 point spread in favor of Penn State, minus 550 on the money line for the Nittany Lions, plus 400 for the Huskies on the money line, and the total is currently at 45.5 at the time of recording. Bundle up, temperatures are in the low 40s, and consider bringing a rain jacket. Don't just bring a windbreaker, bring a rain jacket. Winds are expected to be about 3 to 5 miles an hour, but there is a 40% chance of rain. So temperatures in the lower 40s, 40% chance of rain. The last time Penn State played Washington was the first time in history. This is their second overall meeting. Penn State won in that 2017 Fiesta Bowl, 2017 season Fiesta Bowl, 35-28. Saquon Barkley had that amazing game. So did Deshaun Hamilton, Trace McSorley, right? That was a memorable one, and that was one of the big games that James Franklin won. So don't let people tell you that James Franklin absolutely cannot win the big game. He just can't beat Ohio State. That's really that is fair, but he has won other select big games. We'll finish up with injuries. Questionable players of note for both sides. Penn State is the more banged up team. They are more injured here. Drew Aller I'm just going to keep him here, even though he played against Ohio State, right? I don't know that he's 100%. Denied Dennis Sutton is not 100%. Nicholas Singleton, until I see something different, he is playing through bumps and bruises. Anthony Donko played more than I thought against Ohio State, because Nolan Rucci started in that game, but they brought Donko in, and it seemed to help even with him not being 100%. KJ Winston, we're assuming he is out for the season. Penn State, obviously, James Franklin's not going to confirm that, but it's safe to say that Winston, he had the leg brace and was one of the captains at the last game. It does not look good. Winston's probably going to be out for the season. Caden Saunders, until further notice, he is out. Andrew Rapplier, same thing. Until further notice, backup tight end, he is out. Zariah Fisher, backup defensive end, until further notice, he is out. Keon Wiley, I'm anticipating that he comes back this season. Until further notice, until confirmed, he is out. running back, one and two backup running backs. Penn State could use Cam Wallace or Quentin Martin. It seems like both of them are not available. So until further notice, those guys are out. Your third and fourth string running backs, and they're both quality. They could be used in the running back depth chart. For Washington, talking to Roman over at Locked On Huskies, Washington really only has 3 injured players of note. So I just gave you a laundry list of all the Penn State players that are banged up, questionable, or out there confirmed to be out for this game ahead of time. Washington's injured players of note are the starting left tackle, so that plays into Penn State's matchup for Abdul Carter, Maximus McCree, and he hasn't really been good to this point in the season too at left tackle. He's the starting left tackle, so the backup in there, that's not good for Washington's case. Edge defender's been out for this, or no, he has not been out for the season. Edge defender Zach Durfee, he is a potential game time decision. He is questionable. And then tight end Quentin Moore, just a depth chart piece. He's out for the season, but that really puts the attention on Latu. If Moore was in there, that would just kind of help balance things out for Washington. So that's the only 3. Other interesting thing to note, I thought I'd add in here off the top that I remembered here. Venga Ioane was committed to Washington once upon a time. He's from the West Coast. He was committed to the Huskies, and then Penn State late in the recruiting cycle was able to flip him as a part of that class of 2022. So this game might be personal for Venga Ioane. That's everything that I can cover here in about a roughly 30-minute episode. Again, I thank all of you for checking out these episodes. Thank you so much for being a part of this one. If you have a score prediction, please let me know your thoughts, your favorite key matchups, your final score prediction down in the comments section. I'd really appreciate it if you left a like on this show. If you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams.